Well, folks, good morning, and thank you so much for being here today. I'm joined today by Alexa Gilmour, the MPP for Parkdale High Park and the official opposition shadow minister for the Ontario Autism Program. Lennox, Dr. Robin Lennox, MPP for Hamilton Centre. Kate Dudley-Logue, Vice President, Community Outreach for the Ontario Autism Coalition, as well as other Ontario Autism Coalition representatives, Michelle Newton, Bruce McIntosh, Michelle Ha. I, of course, am Marit Stiles. I'm the leader of the official opposition in Ontario and the leader of the Ontario New Democratic Party. And, of course, I am here today with Chris and Emily, and they are here to talk about their wonderful son, Max. Chris and Emily have been living through what is, I think, every parent's worst nightmare. Just over a month ago, Max was killed on his way home from school. Earlier today, Chris and Emily and I were talking, and I think we were talking about Max. I know that Max, one of his 3 favorite things was school. Max loved school. Max was sent home early that day because there weren't enough resources to support him in his classroom. This is not a unique story. I wish it was. Thousands of students with special needs across this province face this reality every single day. What happened to Max should never have happened because Max should have been in class that day. Exclusions are not new, and they aren't uncommon. The Premier and his Minister of Education know this very well. Parents, like Chris and Emily, advocates like Kate, have been sounding the alarm for years. We need to do something about the unfairness that students with special needs face due to the lack of proper investment in our schools. Here's the thing. As lawmakers, our decisions have real consequences. What happened to Max didn't happen in isolation. It was a consequence of not having enough support in our classrooms. This was preventable. This should never have happened, and we shouldn't be having to stand here today. Chris and Emily should have been able to celebrate Christmas with Max. They should have been able to see him grow up. And they were robbed of their future with him because of decisions that were made by those who have the power to change things. It is really important that you get to hear from Max's family today. So I'm going to pass the mic over to Chris, who's Max's dad, and then we're going to hear from Kate, and then we're going to hear from MPP Gilmour. Thank you. Chris, over to you. Okay, I'll stand right here. You okay?
Yeah. Hi, thank you for being here today. My name is Chris, and this is my wife, Emily, and we are Max's parents. On December 11th, our son was killed after slipping and being run over by a city bus in Hamilton. People have called it a tragic accident, and while accidents do happen, we are here today because this one should never have happened. Max should have been in school that day. At the end of October, we were told by Max's school that due to staffing challenges, the school was proposing a modified schedule that would have Max attending school in the mornings. We were told this would only be a temporary modified schedule just for a few weeks. These weeks stretched into a month and a half, and despite us repeatedly asking when Max could return to full-day school, we were told it was being sorted out. To be clear, we do not blame the school or the Hamilton Wentworth District School Board. We know that they are doing their best and to support students with disabilities like Max. But with their limited resources, it's difficult. We've come to learn that exclusions like this are very common across the province and are a direct result of chronic underfunding that tends to affect students with special needs the most. So on Thursday in the middle of the day, Max was not where he had a right to be, and that is why we are here today. We would love to tell you a little bit about our amazing boy. Maximus, or Max, which most people called him, was such a sweet little boy. who brought such joy and happiness to everybody that knew him. Max had autism and was nonverbal, but still responded to everybody with either his smile that would melt the world. That would melt the world and make you smile back. Or that classic Max smirk, which his parents and teachers knew well, that he would shoot you when asked him to do something, as to say, I hear you, but yeah, let's not do that, and it's okay because I'm cute. Max had 3 loves. His iPad, which he loves since he knew what an iPad was. The other 2 are brand new this year, which was school and Christmas. This year he was so excited for school that out of our 4 kids, we had to get him ready last. Because as soon as he was ready, he would literally push you out the door. Once he was ready. And finally Christmas. He had never showed any interest in holidays, birthdays before. But this year, every time he would find the word Christmas in a book or video, he would run into the room, grab her finger and point to the word, which you had to read 3 times. And he would laugh and giggle. We feel robbed and cheated out of a future with Max. We are so heartbroken and mad. He should still be here with us and should have had a chance to celebrate Christmas that he was so excited about. Now myself and Emily will never have the chance to hear his sweet voice maybe one day say, I love you, Mom or Dad, or feel his hugs he gave to show his love. Our son right now should be learning and playing in school and being supported at school. If he had been, we believe he would still be here today. We cannot bring Max back, but we could speak his name and tell his story and demand that every child with disabilities are no longer excluded, sidelined, or sent home. This should never have happened, and it must never happen again. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is Kate Dudley-Logue, Vice President of Community Outreach with the Ontario Autism Coalition. I'd like to start by just thanking Chris and Emily for sharing Max's story with us and acknowledging the tremendous courage that takes to be here at such an emotional time. I wish I could say that Max being excluded from school due to lack of supports was an isolated incident. But the reality is that this has become a province-wide pattern. Every day across this province, students with disabilities are facing exclusions and modified schedules. This keeps them out of school. The OAC has surveyed families across this province, and the data is beyond troubling. More than 25% of students with special education needs in Ontario are not attending school for full days, with the number one reason for the modified schedule being that the school simply lacked the resources to safely support that student. Approximately 1/3 of students with disabilities have experienced exclusions of some kind this last year alone. To put this in perspective, there are approximately 358,000 disabled students attending Ontario schools, which means that well over 115,000 students are experiencing exclusions. These exclusions don't always come with form or paperwork. They can look like repeated phone calls asking parents to come pick up their child early, or an email in the morning saying that the EA is sick and so the child can't attend school for the day. Sometimes the children cannot be supported during recess or gym or other classes or field trips. This places families in extremely precarious situations. How are parents supposed to maintain employment when their children are not permitted to attend school full-time? And the stress around managing the advocacy involved with ensuring that your kids are in school and being supported safely is leading to high levels of caregiver burnout. If this were happening to non-disabled students regularly, there would be immediate public outrage. I want to make that clear. It would not be accepted, and it would not become normalized. Yet when it comes to students with special education needs, exclusions have quite literally become routine. What makes the situation even more egregious is that the Ford government is fully aware of this crisis. Families, advocates, and organizations like the Ontario Autism Coalition have been raising concerns about exclusions for years, and this government has refused to even collect valid data on how often it is happening, let alone address the issue and attempt to do better. Instead of addressing the systemic underfunding of education, the Minister of Education has chosen to focus his attention on dismantling democratically elected school boards, a move to silence the very school trustees who are attempting to advocate for students and families, like Max's family. Minister Calandra would rather slam school boards for financial mismanagement than address the very real fact that 71 out of 72 school boards in this province were over budget in spec ed alone last year. And despite going over budget, they're still not able to accommodate the amount of students with complex needs in our schools. Special education is being dismantled before our eyes in Ontario. We are beyond concerned. This is now a crisis. We are calling on this government to end the normalization of exclusion and commit to ensuring that students with disabilities are receiving access to full school days and a meaningful and safe education. Thank you very much.
Thank you. My name is Alexa Gilmour, and I'm the MPP for Parkdale High Park. And I want to thank Chris and Emily for their extraordinary courage in sharing Max's story. And I want to thank the Ontario Autism Coalition for their tireless advocacy. But we are not here today because of a lack of advocacy. We are here because this government failed to act. We are here today because the unthinkable happened. Every child in Ontario has a right to learn. It is enshrined in both the Education Act and the Accessibility for Ontarians with Disabilities Act that students with disabilities have the right to attend school without prejudice or discrimination. Max had a right to attend school, the school that he loved, without prejudice and discrimination, and he was denied that right. Because like thousands of students with disabilities across this province, Max was put on a modified schedule. And I want to be clear about what that means. A modified schedule is not flexibility. It means a child being sent home for hours or days because the school cannot keep them safe. And this isn't just happening to Max. The OAC reported that last year alone, approximately 115,000 children experienced this. Arch Disability Law Center found that more than half of students with intellectual disabilities are losing on average nearly 4 of their 6 hours of school day. People for Education reports that in 2024, 63% of Ontario elementary principals reported that they had instructed students with disabilities to stay home because the supports were not available. And that is up 48% from 10 years ago. So this crisis didn't start with this government, but this government chose to make it worse. This government has been in power since before Max was born. 71 out of 72 school boards, including Max's, are spending more on special education than they receive from the province. Let's be precise about this. It's not the schools that are choosing exclusions. They're being forced into them by chronic underfunding by the Conservative government. Educators and education workers are being asked to do more with less, and when something goes wrong, it is the workers, it is the children who bear the risk and the consequences, not the politicians who cut the budgets. Minister Calandra knows that children with disabilities are being excluded from school every single day in Ontario. He knows this, and he has chosen not to act, and that choice has consequences. For Max's family, the consequences are unbearably tragic. Advocates have been warning for years of the pervasive school exclusions that are endangering our most vulnerable children. Just under a year ago, I was in this room with members of the OAC, members of Community Living, as we raised the alarm about the harm of exclusions that are inflicting on Ontario students with disabilities. From this very podium, the community pleaded with the Premier and the Minister of Education to stop the harmful cuts to special education that are putting students with disabilities in harm's way. Had they listened, Max might still be alive. But instead of listening to the disability community, this government is taking every lifeline, including threatening to silence school board trustees, the very people that families turn to as their last line of advocacy. Removing trustees will not fix underfunding. It will only make exclusions more common and families like Max's more isolated. To the parents who are watching and who are being told to keep your child at home, this is not your failure, and you are not alone. What happened to Max was preventable, and the fix is not complicated. Nothing can bring Max back. God, I wish something could. But this government can and must fully fund public education and end the discriminatory practice of forced exclusions in Ontario and guarantee the right of every child to a safe and educational classroom. Because children's lives are depending on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Alexa. Thank you, Kate. And Chris and Emily, I cannot begin to imagine the pain that you're going through, and it seems no parent should have to worry about their kids' safety when they go to school, their child's life anytime, but certainly not when they see their children off to school in the morning. I want to also stop for a moment and remember to thank the transit workers who are also impacted by what happened, the school and the school community that were impacted. I was reminded this morning when I was listening to Chris and Emily talk that it's a whole community that's impacted when a life is lost, especially a child's life, and to hear about how many people were impacted. I wish I'd known Max. And his siblings too, right? So, as a parent, I don't know what I would do if anything like that happened to my children. So I want to thank you so much for your courage. Thank you for your courage and for your honesty in being here today, for telling us about Max. I hope that if the government takes anything from this today, they will honor Max's life by committing to actually ensuring that our schools are properly funded so that children like Max are no longer excluded. MPP Gilmour said it, and I want to reiterate this. It is every child's right to go to school. And that includes children with special needs. Every family has a right to ensure that their kids are in school and that they're safe when they go to school. And what's happening in our schools right now is not happening because educational assistants and education workers and parents aren't doing as much as they possibly can. What is happening is that we are simply not spending enough money to pay those workers adequately, to ensure that we can recruit them, to ensure that we have the right ratio of support to kids. For 8 years, we have been calling this government to account. All of these people here have been doing that. And instead, things have gotten worse. I heard what the Premier said when he was asked about this morning. And I'm going to tell you, it makes me really mad because he knows perfectly well, as Kate and Alexa said, that what they are doing is not enough, and he has the power to do something. You know, there's a lot happening in the world right now. I have people ask me all the time, what can we do to change things? Well, I don't know what we can do right now to save like Greenland, but I know what we could do here in the province of Ontario to save a child's life. We have the power to do that here in the province of Ontario. The government can do something about it. And it's the very bare minimum that we should expect of our government is to keep our children safe and alive. And with that, we are very happy to take questions.
I wanted to ask Kate, because you shared some numbers there and how that might compare to before 2018, before this government took over, because I don't know if you heard the Premier's answer, but he kind of pointed to the former government for some of the problems that we're seeing today. So do you have a comparison of how those numbers?
I don't have a comparison. The OAC has been collecting data on this for the last 2 years only. Certainly, I think, as Alexa had mentioned, this was a problem with the previous government, but it was not a problem to this extent. While I don't have data, I can tell just by what we see in our own community. Exclusions definitely existed prior to 2018, but not to this level. It is at a crisis level now, where most families of children with complex needs are just simply not having their kids at school full time. Whether it's something, as Max experienced, where it's an actual modified schedule that he's going to be coming for this set amount of hours every day, or it's, like I said, the phone calls to come pick up your child early. There are families, believe it or not, who drop their kid off at school and sit in their car and wait, because more often than not, they'll get a call within the hour to come pick up their kid. So, we are beyond the time of ignoring this. And I will say, we're seeing this in huge numbers here in Ontario, but this has been reflected in other provinces as well. It's a systemic issue.
You mentioned the difference in the OAC numbers, but the OAP, Max was waiting.
Yeah. I think it's also noteworthy that Max was stuck on a waiting list for the Ontario Autism Program, something else that we've brought to light. There are, we don't even know the actual numbers right now, but there's well over 70,000 kids stuck on a minimum of a 5-year wait to receive clinical services that would help them be more successful in school and probably require less support in school if they were having access to therapies. Children like Max stuck on that wait list, so they're now in school having no access to those therapies, and now the school is left with trying to pick up the pieces. It's creating more issues within the schools that are harder for schools to manage. So there's a direct link between what's happening with the Ontario Autism Program and what we're seeing in schools.
If Chris and Emily are comfortable to share a little bit more about, you mentioned that Max loved school. How did he feel, having to be sent home so frequently? If you could talk a little bit more about that.
He didn't speak, but he spoke with his eyes and his face, and you could just tell he was depressed. He loved it. And he
as bubbly or bouncing.
It would break your heart because he loved it so much. He couldn't really understand, why am I getting sent home? Is it my fault? Did I do something bad? Yeah. Well, it was every day. He was on a
modified schedule of only 3 hours a day.
And it was supposed to be only 2 weeks, but just kept on. Yeah, we're working on it. He was finally going back for an hour. Instead of picking up at 12, he was getting picked up at 1 the week that the accident happened. And we think that was only just because we kept on hounding them. Just pretty much shut us up. Okay, fine, we'll start him back.
Can I ask just, when you were telling me this morning that how many, the educational assistant, who I know you guys were so grateful to, but had how many children in their care?
In the classroom, she was working at a ratio of 1 to 5.
And were all those children special needs children?
I believe
Could not
at
imagine.
least 2 others were autistic, but I can't.
But they were all
sure.
special needs in one way or another.
Yeah. So
I couldn't imagine that. We were just dealing with Max ourselves as 1. 5? Oh my gosh.
Can you explain a little bit more about how you had to change your life then to manage this schedule?
My hours at work were reduced.
Yeah, she had to.
I had to reduce my hours at work
And because our oldest son is autistic too, somebody always had to be at home just in case we were
Something
told.
happened and one of the kids was being sent home.
So I was originally always at home. And my wife worked. But then when this happened, she had to call and change. And we work at a catering company. So Christmas time is the busiest time. And, we had to cut back our hours, during the busy season.
I wonder what your reaction was to the Premier's response today, that they are doing enough and they are hiring more teachers, etc.
Well, clearly they're not, because my son's dead, so they're not doing enough, and they've had, like I said, 8 years. Like my son was only 7, and the same thing for years now. So, his comments, it's not enough. Like all you ever hear is talk, and look where talk got us.
What would you say to him if you were to meet with the Premier?
Nothing nice, or that's not what Max would want. Max would want his story told, and exactly what I told you guys. He needs to understand, like, this is a consequence for
the chronic
what
underfunding.
your government is doing and underfunding and everything. Like, this is, yes, it's an extreme case, but with real consequences. He should have been in school. Like I said, accidents do happen, but it wouldn't have happened if he was where he should have been, where he had a legal right to be. Like, it's upsetting too, because as a parent, we'll get in trouble with the law if we don't send our kid to school. But they could
A school can
refuse to have him there. How's that right? Yeah.
Marit, I know you said you were angry about the Premier's response today. What did you make of him? The first thing he said was to blame the former government.
I think it's cowardly, but I'm not surprised. I don't expect much from this Premier. He's not a serious Premier. And he's shown us what he thinks. Because with his actions, he has all the power. I mean, look at the size of this government's budget. And they can't make sure that every child can go to school. I think that he has had 8 years, and I am so sick and tired of the excuses. And it's not as if they weren't warned. These people have been coming here for 8 years. And let's be clear, it wasn't all so fantastic before this government either. They acknowledge this. But to sit here, what a coward. Show some, I've said it before, I'm not going to use, but I think he needs to grow a backbone and actually take some responsibility for once and do something about it. It's not okay to blame everybody else for your failures. You have the power, you have the budget. We all know it's not the school boards that decide where money is spent. It is the provincial government. They give them the money and they decide where it's spent. And this government, despite their lies, is not spending enough to protect our children. And so he's got his priorities all wrong. Yeah.
Kate, this is a question for you, I think. What data shows that some boards have, or report anyways, 0 exclusions, some report hundreds. Can you tell me a bit about how this information is tracked?
It's not that.
For 2 years now, this is our second year, the Ontario Autism Coalition has surveyed the disability community. So not necessarily just autism families, but families of all children with special education needs. Our report for this year should be coming out in a matter of weeks. So the data I've used today is just a bit of a teaser of that. We'll have a full report coming out. The data hasn't changed too much from last year. It's certainly not gotten any better. But we survey the community on exclusions, modified schedules, families' feelings about how safe their children are in school, how much of a meaningful education they're getting. We ask a wide variety of questions, and that'll all be coming out probably in 2 to 3 weeks.
Can you expand on what resources are missing that would help address this? They mentioned EAs, but
Sorry, what resources we use for our missing. Yeah, I mean, certainly EAs, specialized teachers, EAs, child and youth care workers, speech language pathologists, any professional that works in our school system that would work with children with special education needs. There's a lack of all of it. As I said, we're watching the deterioration of special education in this province. I know that in my school board in Ottawa, when they, year after year, they're making cuts, and they're trying to make the cuts that will affect the least amount of students. But it's EAs. Last year, they cut a couple psychologists. They're the ones who assess children with special education needs. These cuts are coming all over the place, and it's really hard to understand how you can have Minister Calandra talk about how irresponsible school boards are with their funding when school boards are year after year having to make cuts and they're still not passing balanced budgets, and our kids are still not getting the supports they need.
Chris has something to add to that, actually. Yeah, go ahead.
On that, psychologists. After what happened with Max, the school reached out, for if any of our other children need to talk to anybody. But we're informed that there's one psychologist for 4 different schools, and the appointment would be weeks away. Like, how is that right?
You've heard from educational workers here, have stood here as well, right? Who are the folks who are the educational assistants. And what we know as well is that many boards are having difficulty. They're not funded to provide enough. There are no ratios in most cases, minimum ratios. But I'll tell you this, I have met so many educational assistants who will tell you that it's really hard, and the boards will tell you this, that it's really hard to recruit educational assistants right now. Because imagine what that's like to support 5 children and in a classroom. They are burning out. They are injured. Actually, they are injured. They are, and they are paid so little, the lowest paid. Of course, as always, it's always the most important workers that are paid the least. So it's really hard to recruit them right now too, and there's a reason for it. It's because they're not respected, because there is no kind of minimum, there's a ratio of children to EAs, and because they're not funded properly.
Trying to ask this I don't know quite how to ask it, but is it right to be combining these 2 issues? Clearly there's a lack of resources, and then we had this awful tragedy happen. Is it right to combine the 2?
Yes, because they're related. If he would have had the supports, wouldn't have been on that bus with my wife to slip and all that happened. He would have been in school. So, yeah, I think it is right to compare the both. He had a right to a safe education, and it was not given to him.
And can we ask you guys to just tell us a little bit about Christmas? You said it was his favorite time.
It's just this year. Like
you mentioned he has an older brother.
He has 1 older brother and 2 sisters, a younger and an older sister. He just never before this year was he like, no, not even Halloween, but just for some reason this year for Christmas.
It was a word that he
everywhere.
recognized.
He would go through a book, and whenever he found the word Christmas, he would have to run in, he'd grab your finger, and you had to say it 3 times. He'd say, Christmas, Christmas, Christmas. And then he would smile and giggle and run down the hallway until he found the word again. And we had Christmas decorations. We started putting Christmas decorations up. We had these little figurines of Santa and a penguin and a snowflake. He would run into the room and he'd point to the snowflake, and he had to go snowflake, snowflake, snowflake. And then we had the tree up, and he would end his tree, and he'd say Christmas tree, Christmas tree, Christmas tree. And then he would smile and giggle and run out of the room. Yeah.
More questions? Okay. If we can do is, I don't know if you have other questions for me, I'm fine to take them, but maybe what we'll do is let the family exit now. Okay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.